The Chimney Sweeper from Songs of Innocence by William Blake. When my mother died, I was very young, and my father sold me while yet my tongue could scarcely cry, weep, 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 weep. So your chimneys I sweep, and in sooth I sleep. The poem begins by the chimney sweeper himself telling the story of his despairing life. So here we have this young boy who wants to tell us something. He begins by telling us how his father sold him to the chimney sweeping master when he was just a little boy after his mother died. He was so young that he could not even pronounce the word sweep clearly. Okay, so he would cry and pronounce it weep, 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 weep instead of sweep. So it is clear that the little boys that were sent to work as chimney sweepers were very young. Some could not even speak clearly, like the speaker himself, indicating that he was probably a toddler at that time. The boy continues to tell us how he would sleep at night with the dirt and soot smeared all over his body. There's little Tom Dacre, who cried when his head, that curled like a lamb's back, was shaved. So I said, "Hush, Tom, never mind it, for when your head's bare, you know that the soot cannot spoil your white hair." In the second stanza, the speaker introduces us to his friend Tom Dacre, who was also a chimney sweeper. Now Tom was crying because his white hair was shaved. Now it was shaved maybe because his white curly hair often got tangled and dirty while cleaning the black chimneys. So the speaker tells us how he tries to console or comfort his friend, telling him that it is better to get his head shaved as he will no longer have to worry about the black, dirty soot getting into his hair. And so he was quiet, and that very night, as Tom was a-sleeping, he had such a sight. The thousands of sweepers, Dick, Joe, Ned, and Jack, were all of them locked up in coffins of black. In the third stanza, Tom stops crying after the narrator comforts him. And that very night, while he was sleeping, Tom saw a wonderful dream. Here it says, in his dream he saw thousands of sweepers named Dick, Joe, Ned, and Jack, who were dead, and their dead bodies were lying in black coffins. And by came an angel who had a bright key, and he opened the coffins and set them all free. Then down a green plain, leaping, laughing, they run and wash in a river and shine in the sun. In this stanza, something very wonderful happened. All the black coffins where the dead chimney sweepers were sleeping was opened. Now it was opened by a bright key by an angel, and the angel sets all the sweepers free. Now these lines can mean that the only escape for these young chimney sweepers was death. So after they were released from the coffins, they ran down the green plain, laughing, jumping happily, and washed themselves in the river and dried themselves in the sunlight. This was a very happy moment for these young chimney sweepers who got the freedom they never had. Then, naked and white, all their backs left behind, they rise upon clouds and sport in the wind. And the angel told Tom, if he'd be a good boy, he'd have God for his father and never want joy. So after these young boys took bath and cleaned themselves in the river, they are now naked and white. Now this simply means they are now clean. Remember, these young boys never took bath. Their masters never cleaned them. They would work in the chimneys, they would get dirty, covered in soot, but they would just go to bed like that. But here finally they are now clean. So they left all their bags. Your bags can simply means burden and hardships that they were facing. So they left all those behind and they are now flying in the clouds, playing in the wind, as if they are now finally free from all the burdens they had. And an angel came to Tom and said that if he remains good, then God will become his father. In other words, if you do good, God will give you everything you need. And so Tom awoke, and we rose in the dark, and got with our bags and our brushes to work. Though the morning was cold, Tom was happy and warm. So if all do their duty, they need not fear harm. The sad part is that all that Tom had been experiencing was only a dream. It was not a reality. In this stanza, Tom awoke from his dream and sets back to work again. The speaker says, "We rose in the dark and got with our bags and our brushes to work." Here, "we rose in the dark" simply means that these young boys had to get up very early in the morning, even before sunrise, and rush to work. They had no freedom, they were controlled. These boys had to go through a lot at a very young age. He continues to say that the morning was cold. It was very cold that morning, but Tom was happy and warm. Now, why was Tom happy and warm? The reason is that Tom thinks that if he works hard, everything will be good and he will be able to achieve all his desires. Now, it can also mean that Tom had no other choice. He likes it or not, he has to do the work. So, without complaining, he just did his job.